The education system is not broken. It's working exactly as designed. And the ones who are being hurt the most without anyone raising an alarm are boys. There is an entire generation of young men who are being asked to sit down, be quiet, take orders, and call it education. And when they can't, we don't ask what we built wrong. We medicate them, label them, and move on. That's not a broken education system. That quite literally is the system. So in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly the education system is incredibly harmful for our boys and why it's perpetuating the boy crisis in America. To introduce you to what I'm talking about, let's take this study for example. Test scores changed based on whether or not a teacher knew the gender of the student they were grading. When teachers grade without knowing who did the assignment, the gender gap shrinks by 1/3. Researchers have tested this across various school systems and found the same results every single time. When grading is blind, boys and girls score much closer together. The moment a teacher knows the student's gender, the gap opens back up, and it opens up in girls' favor. A study published in the Economics of Education Review compared the same students graded 2 different ways. Once by their teacher and once by a blind national exam. So comparing the exact same students on the exact same subject and finding different outcomes. But you're probably thinking, how could a teacher be biased in math? Well, because of things like partial credit, how neat they showed their work, the difference between a B- and a B+, and like participation, all judgment calls. And of course, when it comes to bias within reading and writing, it becomes a bit more clear. But the most plausible explanation for why this happens in the first place is girls tend to show desired behavior within classroom hours, whether it's being neat or compliant or like listening and doing it the first time, or even just being organized, like things that shouldn't factor into whether you understand math, but they do. So when we ask why are our young boys falling behind, this is one of the first places we need to look. Not necessarily at the boys, but at the system grading them. And this isn't just recent. Over the last 4 or 5 decades, the education system is just about annihilating masculinity from our schools. And the numbers speak for themselves. But let me ask you a question. How many of your teachers are female? And how many of your teachers were male? Well, according to data, only 1 in 4 teachers is a man. But hold on, that's just the overall average. When specifically looking at primary education, the statistics get much worse. Only 1 out of every 9 primary education teachers is a man. But I want you to think about that and like why that matters. If teacher bias is causing majority female teachers to grade their female students better than their male students, which will then, of course, lead to better overall averages that are reflected on your transcript, better college prospects going into college, while at the same time eroding male competence from something as, unconscious as bias, then I'm pretty sure it matters. Or it just discredits the whole standardized testing as a means of evaluating competence debacle. But over time, if a student's true ability isn't being reflected accurately, and you're allowing someone basically external to you to tell you what you're capable of or, how you've performed, and you base your whole identity and confidence off of that, that could be really harmful. And then when you look at the numbers of like who's actually in the room measuring these students, it starts to make a lot more sense. And then we wonder why boys are just checking out. They go from male deprivation at home to male deprivation at school. Men are not learning from other men. And on top of that, the traits that are more natural to boys, whether it be, questioning authority, risk-taking, competitiveness, they're not being developed in these classrooms, and sometimes they're being punished. And when a system spends 13 years telling boys that they're the problem, don't be surprised by who these boys end up turning to or how they decide to cope. Now, all of that may be really shocking to hear, but it's also the reason why reading and engagement gaps start to emerge in early education during the primary years of their education. But what if I told you Kindergarten isn't even developmentally appropriate for boys. From the time they're born, girls are talked to, read to, conversed with, while boys are roughhoused, tumbled around, and just played with. But research shows that boys, on average, develop fine motor skills, phonological processing, sustained attention, and impulse control later than girls, making kindergarten's current structure, which heavily emphasizes seated literacy tasks, a poor developmental fit. Essentially, by kindergarten, one group has been exposed to a whole lot of language, and the other has just been practicing his sword techniques. And then we hand them both the same literacy test, and then we act surprised by the results. So what's happening here is that there's a very basic biological component that's being ignored. And it's actually bringing young boys a lot of harm and dampening their future success based on arbitrary benchmarks and metrics that are basically designed against them. And in some of these classrooms, boys' natural energy is being labeled as a disorder. According to the CDC's 2022 national data, boys are diagnosed with ADHD at nearly twice the rate of girls, and then given Schedule II narcotics. And like I said, we label them, medicate them, and then move on. Yet we fail to acknowledge the nuance of child development and the incompatibility that our education system offers for them. And then we make them feel crazy for not thriving in an education system that's actually bringing real long-term harm. But here's what you don't realize when you're sitting in that room with a teacher, a counselor, the school specialist. You are allowed to push back, right? Like, trust your intuition. You know your children, you know your son. And if something feels off, if your once bright, energetic, and confident young boy starts to self-isolate and disconnect and become anxious, you're not just being paranoid. And don't let anyone ever tell you that maybe you're being too much, or you're asking too many questions, or you're making their day hard. So don't let anyone make you feel like you're doing too much or saying too much just because you want a better understanding of what's happening in their classroom, in their school, or just in general. The system is not designed to see him accurately. We just spent this entire video explaining that. So stop measuring him based on these systems and these metrics and these arbitrary benchmarks. So if there's anything I want you to take away from this video, it's question the label before you just accept it. Ask what behind actually means for your student. Behind on what measure? Based on whose metrics? Compared to which standard, right? Like, the experts have their role, but you're not obligated to outsource your intuition and what you feel is best for your child to an institution who won't remember you if you pulled out your student within a year or 5. The system was never going to fix this, but we can if we make enough noise. Thanks for watching this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you know a parent who you think needs to hear this, send it to them. Subscribe and I'll see you guys next time.